Dear Dhamma friends, this is the time for our today's talk. To start the talk, you may everyone consent 3 times, it's sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tasse bhagavatu arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavatu arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavatu arahato samma sambuddhasse. Yang va pananyam pikichyajjattam paccattam kakkalang karigatang upadinang ayang vuccata uso ajjatta patavidhatu titi. Dear Venerable Sirs, Dhamma friends, yesterday being our first day of the retreat, we started the Dhamma talk with the topic known as this Mahā Hatthipadopama Sutta, based upon that particular discourse, and I thought of continuing the same topic or same particular discourse and keeping that as the main topic, deliver these talks as a series. So if I am to give a little summary about this particular sutta, they are the chief disciple of the Buddha, the Venerable Sariputta. Out of his initiative, he asked the other fellow meditative monks, and giving an example, if you wish to understand the crux of the gist of the teaching of the Buddha, you have to understand 4 Noble Truths. As far as you understand these 4 Noble Truths, all the other teaching will be come into contact with. So therefore, as the most skillful thing, you have to master these 4 Noble Truths. And he first enumerate one after the other the truth of suffering and the cause for the suffering, and the emancipation from suffering, and the pathway that is leading to emancipate from the suffering. And there we understood that truth of suffering is not a very popular or desirable subject for to talk, because it appears like something nihilistic, it appears like something not so appealing. But in order to get this subject become a subject more appealing and desirable, we had a little comparison between the Western psychology and the Buddhist psychology, where the Western psychology also was thinking about salvation from the suffering, and the Buddha also, in that sense, there are some parallelism. He also have compassion and idea about salvation of suffering from the human being. But the Western psychology very well accept this total analysis of suffering itself is interminable. That's accepted fact in the West. But compared to that, the Buddha, he gave a complete, thorough analysis of the suffering itself, and therefore it is very radical. It is invitive. It's a very broad way. And by analyzing the truth of suffering, he indicated just mere acceptance and understanding, and the diagnosis itself is answering the misery, answering this suffering, human suffering. So therefore one must be very bold to radical, as well as going against the grain kind of understanding toward this very fact of suffering. So therefore, out of 4 Noble Truths, first and foremost is the truth of suffering. So nowadays, therefore, comparing the Eastern and Western kind of analysis, the West definitely showing examples as to the deteriorating part of the social norms and the social values and the increasing amount of suffering. So therefore, they are bound to think little more than the scientific approach, that is to think about the fate. They have to think about the moral responsibilities, and they have to think about a way out without an second person or second technique or second outside thing. So in that sense, we are better off because the dialogue is now already started. Even the Western people ready to accept this karma and the karma result, or that means the fate in the sense, and introducing this behavioral medicine rather than this allopathic chemicals, behavioral medicine, that is as to the food and postures and way of thinking. And more than that, they are considering about this mindfulness as the tool to diagnose itself and answering within without the second person. No free association, no counseling, no psychoanalysis necessary as a second person, no second technique or second external thing. By learning first theoretically and deductively understanding, if one can see the very suffering happening within. There is no second person or second force involved, and that itself is a bold and kind of a radical way. The way out also need not have any second factor, second agent. So that is how the value of being a human being is being now talked very openly, rather than believing on another omnipotent, omnipresent God or any second source. So this is a good dialogue, and therefore earlier even in the East, we Eastern people thought, even though this is truth and even though it is the accepted fact, it's very difficult to communicate, it is ineffable, very difficult to put into words. But now, when you are reading the Western books, they try to interpret that paradoxical situation with new terminology and new theories, and therefore kind of a dialogue is going on. That means the East and the West, and the religious and the scientific, that kind of a dialogue is going on. And that is why I mentioned that we are in a advantageous position, in a lucky era, if we are really in the forefront of this dialogue. For that, each of us must keep it in your mind. We must be mindful. Otherwise, we will miss the bus. So therefore, if you are mindful and practicing yourself in a regular way and listening to the East as well as the West, we will day by day getting into this crux of the problem and develop the self-confidence. There is no second person or there is no second agent. There is no particular tool necessary. Everything is within. In that sense, this Mahā Hatthipadopama Sutta is giving us a tool bag, a set of tools for us to work. Whenever the Buddha is mentioning about this being, an entity, a man or woman, he says it is aggregates. Sometimes it says 5 aggregates are given more emphasis on the materialistic side. Sometimes it gives with the more emphasis on the non-material side, or the mental side. Whenever the materiality is understood and it is to be brief and to go in detail with the mentality, it presents as the whole materiality as the kaya, corporeality, and then the feelings, perception, formations, and the consciousness as the four aggregates of the mentality. Whenever someone needs a detailed approach to the toward the materiality, then it says Patavi, Apo, Tejo, Vayo, the four ingredients of the materiality, and all the four aspects of mentality, put it as Vijnana. So they are also presented as 5, but the early presentation is meant for the people, those who have fair understanding on the materiality and specialization on the mentality. The second part, they give more detail on the materiality and mentality as summarized into the consciousness. This Mahā Hatthipadopama Sutta giving a detailed approach towards the materiality. Therefore, it says the truth of suffering is due to the attachment to these 5 aggregates. The first is the body, and then the Venerable Sariputta is asking, what does it mean by the body? Then he says, it is the earth element, the water element, air element, and the heat element. And if someone has time, please go through in this particular sutta. This is the number 28 in the Majjhima Nikaya, middle in saying. It is giving a very good treatment as to different elements. So I thought of dealing it for the sake of common understanding. So as far as the earth element is concerned, the phrase that I quoted at the beginning, he says, Yangva bananyampi kinchi ajjattang pachattang kakkalang karigatang upadinang ayang uchatauso ajjatta patahi dhatu. At the beginning it says, if you take your very body, fathom long body, in a conventional way it cut into 32 parts. That 32 parts make use in order to develop the repulsivity of the body also. And as the second part is to see the elementary characteristics of the body. And in these 32 parts, early 20 parts, Kesa, Loma, Naka, Danta, Tacho, up to the 20th part, it is more the solid things like body hair, the head hair, the skin, the teeth, the nails, all the other organs. So Venerable Sariputta gives the whole 20 particles or bodily parts to indicate the gross earth element, and giving that list, he says, others such as the whatever may be you take as in or mind or within your capacity, that is ajjata. Pachattang, it arisen due to your own consciousness. You call this is my body, this is not my, that limit is up to your consciousness. And therefore it is pachattang, kakkalang, that is coarse, karigatang, it is rough, and upadinang, and after naming this is me and this is not me, you attach into the part that you have recognized as me. And that is what the area where the Patavi Dhatu is being defined. So this is a kind of a challenging to the conventional knowledge as to what is the limit or what is the boundary as to in and out. In general speaking, the skin, from the up top hair to the bottom sole, skin as the periphery, this is what we consider as internal. Whatever beyond that we call external. Or we can say the epidermis and the nervous system, nervous end up to the skin, we consider as internal, and others are external. So this is the general acceptance. But supposing we take the serious business of sitting and meditating upon this Patavi Dhatu, then as a set of instructions it says you sit comfortably and symmetrically, relax yourself and focus the attention to so-called internal Patavi Dhatu or internal shape or internal body or sitting posture. And there for the first time you are going to understand this is what I call I am. This is called what I am, me. This is called what I am, I. That is the skin as the basis. So when you are observing like this, you are bound to see the posture, or you are just being as to I am not asleep, I am not fainted, I am aware of just very being here and now. So that is the point you start the internal external boundary. Suppose that instead of be aware of your being, if you happen to meet the natural in-breath and out-breath, then you can easily replace your being from this in and out air. So you can be concerned equally or as well to the natural breath. So when you are observing this natural breath, you will see that breathing is happening on your upper part of the body. So therefore easily you can forget about the lower part and be aware of the upper part. And there the upper part of the body become internal, and the lower part also you are slowly giving up, becomes somewhat external. Okay, now we'll say that the practitioner is successfully come up to that level. He or she is now with the breath. And then the further instruction says, if possible, try to feel the touching point. Whether it is on the left side of the nostril or right side of the nostril or top of your upper lip, and wherever may be, what is the most touching point. And then you, if you manage to see the particular point, you take only that point as in or internal, others become external. And that is how the pointedness happens. That is how the one-pointedness happens. At the beginning, I will put it in the different version, different way. To sit and forget about the rest of the world is a huge generous action. Then only you can come up to your body. Otherwise, you will not. If you are concerned about the external world, other places, you can't come the attention to the breath, to the body. And therefore, there's a huge generosity for you to forget about the yesterday, the tomorrow, the other places, other being, and come up to your body. And there the boundary is the skin. And then you to take up into the breath, you must be still generous to give up the lower part of your body. Otherwise, you will be so much engrossed and obsessed with the bodily notion, you will find difficult to give up even the lower part. Then you will not successful even to catch the breath. Okay, now once you taken the breath on the upper part, then you will be challenged to see the pinpoint, the one particular point or touching point. It must be pragmatic and practical. And then pointedness happen, and there you have to forget about the upper part of the body also. You see how much we are defining by each and every step the internal, external limits. And when Venerable Jnanananda Katukurinde is putting this into in a still dramatic way, he says the outermost layer of the inner boundary is almost the innermost layer of the outer boundary. That means the skin at the beginning. And when you come to the upper part of the body, the outermost boundary of the inner, so-called inner, is almost the same, the innermost boundary of the outer. And then when you come to the touching point, you are exactly the same, and you are reducing. That means you are giving up and generous, forget about the rest of the world. Okay, now you are with the, for the sake of explanation, you are with the breath, that touching point. And when the in-breath happens, you must be completely forgetting about the out-breath. Otherwise, you can't study in-breath. When the out-breath happens, you must be completely forget about in-breath. That is, mindfulness is so sharp. When the in-breath happens, you must be totally unmindful about out-breath. When the out-breath becomes the focus, you are totally unmindful to the in-breath. So this is how the Patavi Dhatu, you focus into one particular point, and then only then you can see the Patavi Dhatu, or the earth element, in its absolute terms. It is like you take a piece of earth and put it under the microscope and focus only to that point, so that you have to forget about the rest of the earth if you wish to see that grain of sand. So selecting one particular point is forgetting about the rest of the world. This is how the Ajjatta Bahidha or internal-external limit is being defined. For an uneducated person, for an uninstructed person, it's a fixed thing. It's anyone think that the body is limit, skin is the margin, within that is internal, but outside is external. But in the very meditation and focusing on the one single point, you are invariably changing this in and out changes, internal external boundaries, and you go to the one particular point, and there when the in-breath happens, you are forgetting about the out-breath. When you are focusing on the out-breath, you must be ready to forget about the in-breath. Otherwise, you will never see the intrinsic characteristics, personal characteristics of the Patavi Dhatu. So once you really sharp, when the in-breath happens, as to this is understand as to this is not out-breath. When the out-breath happens, you are so sharp as to say this is not in-breath. That is how you make the in-breath and out-breath face-to-face with your mindfulness and the concentration. When that happens, huge difference, huge sensational transference happens, not only in the earth element, but in your focusing mind, the consciousness. So, to happen that, so much of variables, so much of external factors has to be aligned with. If anything goes wrong, you can't come up to that face-to-face situation. So therefore, once you focus your attention to the in-breath, and you are well aware that it is not out-breath, and you are really giving the proper appreciation as and when the noting mind is the in-breath and out-breath, it is almost like Nibbana. You won't believe the value of one breath you are making mindfully is such a sharp approach. So therefore, whenever the first time in sitting, you are confronting the in-breath and out-breath, that's a huge breakthrough. You understand the definition, meaning of the mindfulness. You understand in order to focus upon one thing, you have to forget about the rest of the world, and you have done it, and therefore you see your potential. But hardly any beginner appreciate this very first step, very first ABC on the onset or outset of the beginning of the meditation. If that is disturbed, there is no success. I am repeating, if that is disturbed, no success. So therefore, each day, you start with the whole world and slowly forgetting one after the other and come back to the breath. If you are taking the breath as the object of meditation, then you are focusing when the in-breath happens, forgetting about the whole world, one thing at a time, and that done well. Do it wholeheartedly, and that very moment is immeasurable value. So therefore, the teacher's responsibility first is to define this and say, Whenever the in-breath happens, if you are there, if you are ready, if you are vigilant, if you are mindful at that moment, that itself is a huge radical kind of thing, because our mind is so fragmented, so dissipated, so split. So even for 1 second, if you can keep it there, that indicates this is possible only for human beings. No other beings can do it. So therefore, even after being a human being, if you are not testing it, that is what the Buddha calls it's a wastage of time, wastage of the opportunity. So whenever you come up to that level, appreciate it as almost like Nibbana. So each and every one single breath, if you can keep up with the mindfulness, it's a enormous value. Then onward, the teacher or the senior meditator or your helper has a very easy task. Say, now continue it. That's all. In-breath to out-breath, out-breath to in-breath. When that is happening, if you are considering this as the most prime task of your life, and you have already started, see how much your other abilities or your other acquisitions help promoting this continuity of mindfulness. All your abilities becoming, all your abilities will be distractions. More and more you have any kind of other qualification, all qualifications become disqualifications in order to keep the breath in face-to-face. Because it is rationalizing. It is always asking, what is the use of being face-to-face with the breath? What does it give? Any social value? Any political value? Any economic value? Nothing. So in order to maintain it, you must have such a mindset, such a radical way, or such a faith on the teacher and the teaching and all the other practitioners. So that is how you can break through into the second thought moment, third thought moment, and second breath, third breath like continuity. When that continuity happens only, you are bound to see the breath not like me, not like mine, not like my soul, but as and when it manifests. That the breath, in-breath versus out-breath, can manifest only through these four elements. There is no other way. Either it has a roughness, or hardness, or warm, or cool, or vibration, or stiffness, or tension. Whatever the thing you are going to do, going to experience it, nothing but pure elements. But our rational mind is always crossing. It never try to go there and see that pure Dhamma. Instead, you consider this is my in-breath, this is my second in-breath. All the time you are going to put labels as to me, mine and myself. So therefore, don't think or don't consider this rationalization and entertaining doubts as one of your mistakes. It is not your mistake, it's a mistake of human mind. You are understanding the trends of your trend of the human mind, not of yours. That's why it says, don't assume this as achievement as myself or the mistake as myself. So this part is very nicely Venerable Sariputta, Mahā Sariputta is putting with so much of explanation, so much of examples. He says, the moment you are focusing the breath, or rising and falling, or left leg or the right leg, and you see ajjhattang, you see you are not thinking about the other people or other time or other places. Ajjhattang, here and now. Pacchatang, it's arising due to your focus. Instead, if you are focusing on what you are to see, what you are to hear, what you are to smell, what you are to taste, you will never think or you never feel the hardness of the breath, or hardness of the rising body, or hardness of the left leg touch. Due to your focus only, that very subtle thing manifests at the cost of seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, tasting, all the kind of thing. So therefore that very manifestation is pacchattam. It is due to your focus. If you are not focusing, that will go unnoticed. Instead you will be thinking about something, someone else thing, some other places or some other time. So that is, you are deranged. You are dislodged. Whatever may be that is tangible and verifiable, you are not here and now. Whenever you are here and now, you are experiencing because of your focus. Ajjatam pacchattam. Kakkalang karigatang is the roughness and grossness, is the attributes given to this earth element. And upadinang, that is the very thing you consider as me, mine, or my soul, or my in-breath. That you tend to cling into that because you recognize this as internal. And that is what the Venerable Sariputta says, mind you all, this is what we call the Patavidhatu. And giving this kind of very practical, pragmatic, under-the-nose explanation or definition on the mindfulness, he says, this is internal, and likewise there is external Patavidhatu you can't perceive, but you can deduce. The whole earth is a representative of this same Patavidhatu, and that Patavidhatu undergoing so much of earthquakes, tsunami, and all the kind of natural disasters. And if it is undergoing such irreversible damages, what about this little Patavidhatu that you have selected as myself, and therefore you easily can understand this is also subjected to the changes, subjected to suffering, and better not cling into that as myself. And give an explanation, big explanation about how the earth element at large, as the whole universe or as cosmos, undergoing so much of changes. When compared to that very tiny earth element as select as myself, you can easily understand if that is the case, this is also the same fate. And then comparing that internal and external Patavidhatu, Yacheva Ajjatika Patavidhatu, Yach Bhaira Baida Patavidhatu, Patavidhatu Revesa. That very Patavidhatu you have selected, it do not know whether you have selected it as you or you rejected it as others. Patavidhatu have no any notion. They are mere Patavidhatu. Part of it you selected as myself, and you are worrying so much about that particular thing you selected. But what about the outside thing? When it is undergoing any changes, you are not much worried because it is not you. But as far as the Patavidhatu is concerned, the nature of Patavidhatu has no notion whether it belongs to some person or it is in the living or it is non-living. So therefore, consider external, internal is the same. For me, before getting this Buddhist or literal kind of impact, one day I participated in the funeral. It was our dean, faculty dean. He was a Catholic person, Tamil Catholic, and a very nice gentleman. He was so dedicated his life to the education. He left his family, the village, and he was completely living in the university for 20 odd years. Not a single person came to take care about his funeral. We students, we were in the second year, got up a committee, and we were so happily taking care about everything. Ultimately, we went to the church. We are Buddhists, not usually going to the church. That day, for the first time, I went to the church and underwent the service, and then went into the burial ground. And father came up to the burial ground, and after every ritual thing, after putting the coffin down, he took little soil from the earth and throw into the coffin, telling ash to ash, soil to soil. So it was so striking for me. Oh, this is the whole story of the life. Part and parcel of the earth, we take it as myself and protect it as I am a human, I am a male, I am a female, I am educated, I am beautiful, all the kind of thing. At the end, at the death, again it is going and dissolving into the same earth. Ash to ash, soil to soil. So this is the exactly thing Venerable Sariputta says, Yacheva ajhatika patavidhatu, Yacheva bhaita patavidhatu revesa. Whatever you call this is as my earth element, whatever you call this is as external earth element, this is just mere earth element. That itself is enough for you to relinquish from it, not to claim this as me, not to claim this as mine, not to claim this as my soul. If you are making your mind with respect to this Patavidhatu in that sense, if someone is blackguarding you in an unjustifiable manner, if you are arrogant, if you are going to take this as myself, you are definitely retaliate. Telling you must understand who am I am not going to take it so simply, I am going to retaliate and so much of fighting happen. Instead, if you understand this is I am taken a piece of Patavidhatu or earth element as myself, he is blackguarding to this earth element, who cares? So he can blackguard as much as possible, nothing hit. It go through, passes through. Instead he will take a stone or a club or knife and he's going to chop you and kill you and hit you. And there Venerable Sariputta says, if you are really listening to the teaching of the Buddha, Buddha has mentioned, if two people come and going to cut you into two pieces by a cross saw, binding you into the earth and holding you in such a way, cutting into two pieces by the cross saw, even if you are going to hate these people, you are not really carrying out the instructions of the Buddha. So therefore, even someone is hitting you, even someone is killing you or torturing you, you must just understand they are torturing because I have Patavidhatu. Patavidhatu is the one going to accept this hit. So why should I worry? So that even under such terrible conditions, you can remember the virtues of the Buddha. You can remember the virtues of the teaching. You can remember the virtues of the virtuous being so far carried this message after 2,500 years. They all were so compassionate or so equanimous. That is how they themselves liberated as well as carried this message up to us. So therefore, under such circumstances, definitely, if you have no any trained mind, if you have no proper view, definitely mind get agitated and irritated and fault finding, all the thing happen. If that is the case, you are the loser. So therefore, even under such circumstances, you must understand what I call as myself is mere Patavidhatu or earth element. So consider it, this earth element is a little bit of piece from the whole earth at large. So why should I claim this as me, mine and the self? So therefore, with respect to Patavidhatu, either you can consider as a just elementary characteristic, that is also one way of meditation. Or you can, considering its mere nature, it's holding the nature of Patavidhatu, manifestation of Patavidhatu. So even if you are going to get blamed or even if you are going to get hit with, if you can use this in the proper way, you can make a point to radiate loving kindness also. Or you can make a point to recollect the virtues of the Buddha also. You can make a point to recollect the virtues of Dhamma also, or virtuous beings also, your precepts also. So therefore, based upon this Patavidhatu, you can expand without limits. So each and every step is fairly discussed with respect to the Patavidhatu in this particular sutta. I would like to bring yet another example the Buddha has mentioned as far as this retaliation and arguing is concerned, the Buddha says, whenever we are taking a metal vessel, something like a ball like this, when you hit it, it has ringing sounds because it is solid. So when you are going to purchase such a thing, you just hit it and see if it is going to give a ringing sound, that it's a good product. But when you go take it to home, maybe you drop it and it has a crack, it's going to go. Whenever the crack is happen, when you then onward you hit it, the ringing sound won't come. So you also must train yourself like a cracked vessel, the Buddha says. If you are so much of arrogance, if you are so much of self-concern, you will retaliate just like a solid vessel. Someone hit it, so much of ringing sounds comes. That indicates you are so self-centered. You are so full with conceit. That is how the arrogance comes. But if you are training yourself like a cracked metal vessel, you will never retaliate thinking that he maybe got a wrong news or kind of a understanding that maybe he is blackguarding. If I am going to retaliate, ultimately I am conflagrating the situation. So you train in such a way. Sache neresi atthanang kanso upata yata. Esapattose nibbanang sarambo tena vijjati. Train yourself as if a cracked bronze vessel. If it is so, you are already at peace. Within you there is no retaliation. You are not going to give explanation. You are not going to argue with second person, and therefore you find a appeasement even in the argumentation. So therefore, as far as the materiality is concerned or elements are concerned, when you go deep into the characteristic of elements, you find these earth element never possess any kind of belonging. It does not know whether it is representing a female or male, or whether it is a part and parcel of an iron or rock. And as being so, we consider, or I consider, these parts as myself. If that is hurt, I am getting hurt. So that is the normal, that is the conventional acceptance. So to go through it, see through it, you reduce one particular earth element part and give the full focus, full mindfulness and full attention, and that is what we do in observing the in-breath and out-breath. Whenever the hardness going to happen, or softness going to happen, roughness going to happen, or smoothness going to happen, or heaviness going to happen, or lightness going to happen, see, these are the attributes of the earth element. So when you are feeling, the mind, the rational mind is going to say, my nose is heavy, or my leg is heavy, or my whole body is light. That is the way it attributes or try to connect with your conventional knowledge. Specifically that happens whenever the breath becomes subtle and you are supposed to keep the attention with the calming down the breath. When this is happening, you will see all of a sudden the whole body, throughout the body, there may be some crawling animals like sensation, tinglings happening. Or sometimes the left part is appear very heavy, the right part is very light. Or sometimes you feel jerks in the particular muscle and goose pimples appearing here and there. So instead of focusing on the nostril, the point where you pinpointed, but the whole body going to give abnormal kind of the elementary characteristics. So if you are so concerned about your body and it is so obsessed with, it will be an objection, it will be the distraction for you. But whatever the wish or whatever the determination going to happen, at a certain amount of concentration, at a certain amount of mindfulness, this is going to happen. The elementary characteristic become amplified. It is basically happening at the epidermis level. So sometimes in between not the first and the second eyelid, the third eyelid become very, very sensitive. Or both the sides of your nostrils, around your mouth and your nails or heart, all the sensitive places going to issue special signals. So if you are unprepared, you will open eyes and see what is happening. Whether the ants are crawling, nothing happens. It's all what the mind made. So if you are to forget about your body and to concentrate only on the elementary characteristics, that is what must be your training. Instead of to report that my hand is heavy or my that particular part is light, just see the lightness and the heaviness rather than attribution to your bodily parts. And otherwise, you will be so obsessed, you will never pass through this stage and bring back the attention to your in-breath and out-breath. In-breath, out-breath itself is happening like, feeling like some elementary characteristic, but not only that, the whole body also going to happen. So at that level, you must not try to suppress them, not must react to them. You just understand this is a stage of meditation and stage of refinement or purification of your mind where the elementary characteristic become very, 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 very prominent. And when that happens, you may see additionally, even though you are going to focus the attention on the in-breath and out-breath in the very sharp, discrete way, both the in-breath and out-breath appear to be same. When it is gross, you can see the clear differences. But when they become subtle, and still you give the continuity of mindfulness, steadfast mindfulness, it is appear like both are the same. When that happens, only the whole body, the amplification is going to happen. So they are, if you are well aware and ready to sacrifice your rational mind and instead opening the door to you, the absolute world, then the sacrification or a beginner's mind is very necessary. So when you go there, if you can manage to go beyond that, ultimately you can understand whether the particular point you selected as your primary object or your whole body, they are happening according to their own accord. You have no control. The earth element, it has its own way of behavior. The water element has its own way of behavior. Heat element and all the elements they have. So when you go deep and deep, you will understand whether you accept it or not, there is no governing power. There is no controllability. And if you are going to assume that you have a controllability, that is very notion is the what undergoing torturing. Therefore the Buddha says, see them as such and understand just like the external earth element and the air element, they have their own law, their own the natural law, exactly in the in-breath and out-breath. So everything is made out of these elements. The elements has their own law. It is called Uttuniyama. That is how the climate happens. So this is a microclimate, that's a macroclimate. As far as you know, you can't control the macroclimate, you can't control micro also. So you will never deduce, you will never be qualified to deduce like that as far as you consider this is my leg, this is my hand, this is my part and parcel of the body. So much so you will be obsessed and worrying about these changes. But if you are keeping up with this theory or deductive knowledge or at last with the direct touch, you will understand more and more you go to deep into the elementary characteristic, you will end up with the equanimity. Equanimity towards your earth element as well as external earth element. Your water element as well as the external water element. Under such circumstances, you will be less and less arrogant. You will be less and less fault-finding. You will be less and less discouraged. And that is how the broadening of the mind happens. And once that elementary characteristics are being recognized and understood and unobsessed with them, then only you are qualified to see the space in between the elementary characteristics. As far as you are hooked up with this and obsessed with this, the good and the bad of the earth element, the good and the bad of the water element kind of thing, you are not qualified, you are not refined to go into the space in between. More and more you develop the equanimity towards the heat and the cold, the fluidity and the cohesiveness, roughness and the smoothness, then only you will be slowly exposed into the the space in between. That means through the diagram or to the picture, you are just going back to the canvas. Upon this canvas only all the drawing is there. Usually you look at the drawing, but if you can see through them, you can see the canvas. This all the elements are working in the total emptiness. That is why we can discriminate earth element from the fire element, water element, because there is the delimiting space. And moment you can dissolve the boundaries between the elements and the space, our mind's language is completely lost. You can't put into experience into words. You can't communicate with other things. So that itself is making like cornering yourself. You become dumb-bound and you feel like lost. So, but anyway, without passing that, at least the mastery towards the materiality, you are not qualified to go into the mentality. So therefore, materiality itself has the existing and non-existing elements. Existing elements are the one we recognize as four elements. But it is happening in the space that is non-existence, because there is nothing. As far as there is nothing, it is nothing to undergo any changes. No transformation. The earth element, water element, heat element and others, there is something existent, though therefore always undergoing changes. That very changes are the one we call torturing and burning or the suffering. The moment you understand this non-existent or the space that is not undergoing any changes, there is no suffering, going to happen, because there is nothing existing, and definitely there is no soul. And therefore, as far as you are obsessed, as far as you are choosy, as far as you are selective on the earth element, air element and kind of thing, you will be so much engaged, you will never see the bigger part of your picture. That means the space. And as I mentioned yesterday also, even the science, now we have come up to that level, going to the not on the simple microscope but go to the electron microscope and go there, more and more you go into the atoms, you are being invited to go to the subatomic particles. More and more you go into the subatomic particles, you are bound to see within that it is nothing but some energies. They call quantums. And these energies are in the field. These quantums are very, very rare to see with compared to the space it is entertained, even within the matter. And that atom is, with respect to the next atom, is a huge space. Easily you can see by looking at the galaxy, how much the distance between two astronomical objects. So it is exactly the thing in the simple subatomic particles or galaxy. So that is called holographic explanation, and that is exactly the Buddha says, if you can go into the single part of your in-breath and out-breath, you can understand the whole world. These represent the whole world, that within that particle, within that small fraction of in-breath and out-breath, or the present moment of in-breath and out-breath, it's only the elementary characteristic. You can define, you can discern, you can see it. Once you master it, you can see huge gap between the in-breath and out-breath. Even within one in-breath, there are 1001 in-breaths. Even within one out-breath, there are 1001 in out-breaths. Each and everything is separated, delimited with the space. So more and more you go to the space, you will be more and more less and less arrogant. You will be equanimous, and therefore you can understand whether the person in front of you, whether he is meditating or not, he also the same. Whether he understand it or not, it's a separate issue, but that is he also exactly the same like me. To explain it, the recent Mind and Life book series, it says 3 episodes in the human civilization. The very first one, it says, about 3,000 to 6,000 years ago, Socrates is talking with a slave. It's the photo, it's imagining and presenting for the sake of argumenting. It says the Socrates is the best educated, refined person at that time, and the slave is the half-life, half-soul. No one considered even as a being, but with the present knowledge of physics, there is no difference between the Socrates and the slave. Both have the same understanding, same integrity, same dignity, but the Socrates can express, the slave can't. That's all difference. So therefore, discrimination among the nation or sectarianism, everything is, that is your lack of understanding even at least the matter. This matter itself is already enlightened. It has no discrimination whether it is manifesting in the human body or in a non-living organization, or whether it is in the male or female. It has no that sense, but we are the one attributing it. Soon you attribute it, you get committed, you're bound to maintain it, it is undergoing changes, then the suffering happens. So therefore, at a time, take one little piece and go deep into that. It may be breath, it may be your hair, it may be body hair, whatever may be particle, you can access through the earth element, or water element, or air element, or heat element, exactly the same. Once you master the existence, then only you will be exposed to the non-existence, and non-existence is naturally boring, naturally monotonous, naturally appear like nothing. Never no one is going to explore into that unless otherwise the Buddha come and say, please, master whatever manifesting, whatever the prominent thing, and seeing through the mastery, go into the non-existence. That is the path, that is the middle path. And when you go there, you reach the least frictional path. You get aligned, your energies, and then the transmission going to take place, power transmission going to take place. Otherwise, as far as you are dealing with the existing particle or matter, that your mind is fragmented, very difficult to achieve a lasting decision. So therefore, even mastery of the materiality itself, now the teaching of the Buddha has seconding force from the science. It also really comes to the brim where how a matter becomes energy and energy becomes matter. The consciousness is the one deciding whether it is an energy or a matter. Soon it becomes matter. It be either a visual object or sound or smell or taste or touch or any other thing. As far as it is energy, there is no such a discrimination. So therefore, what you see, that you are. That is the way they put into English. Wherever you go, there you are. So your mind is the one manifested by the seeing, hearing, smelling, touching. That is very difficult task because it is more related to the mentality. But when you are taking the materiality, the breath, walking, and rising and falling of your abdomen, everything you have to go deep as much as possible into tiniest most particle, and then you are bound to see no boundaries. But the thing is, are we ready? Can our mind comprehend that, see the existent and non-existent, the matter and the energy boundary broken between the in and out? So that is why the Buddha says, if you are to claim that you have mastered the breath, in breath and out breath, you have to see 11 facets. You have to see the gross form of the breath, the subtle form of the breath. You have to see the internal form of the breath, external form of the breath, near form of the breath, far away form of the breath, desirable form of the breath, undesirable form of the breath, the past form of the breath, present form of the breath, and the future form of the breath. But easily you can get a piece of paper and see, when the breath becomes desirable, you will be happy to go and do interviews and say, today my meditation is very good. But whenever the breath appears undesirable, you brood telling, my meditation is bad, something wrong, why is that? And the internal, external wise, as far as the breath appears internally, you consider as a good meditation. Whenever the boundary is broken, your heart breaks. You feel sorry to report also. And it appears like you are waiting for a dentist, that you know when you are going into the room what you are going to happen. So interview is like very boring and difficult because you have before mindset, the breath must be desirable, not undesirable. It must be gross, it must be never go to the subtle. It must be inner, it never go outer. It must be close, never go out, far away. It must be here, but never the past form, the future form. You see, out of 11, 5 you consider as good, 6 you reject. But the Buddha says you have to give the equal value, choiceless awareness, evenly suspended attention for all the 11 facets, then only at least you will see the materiality as such. Leave aside the mentality. So therefore, what much meditation you have done on the in-breath and out-breath is not enough. Even the next breath you must consider as a fresh. You must consider as a beginner. Try to see yet another facet which you have yet to see. So the Venerable, the Buddha himself says to his own son, Rahula, "O Rahula, if you can master the breath in all the 11 facets, I will assure you one thing, your last breath in your deathbed also will happen mindfully. Nothing to worry about the death. So much so the mindfulness becomes sharper, more and more you master the breath. So therefore, when the sound disturbs, see the breath with sound and without sounds. When the pain disturbs, try to see the breath with pain and without pain. When the thoughts are going to disturb, see the breath, through the thoughts and without thoughts. Each and everything is going to show you yet another facet. I will guarantee you, if there is no disturbances, there are no way to see new faces, new facets. So each and every distraction, each and every the impediment is to show yet another facet of the breath. So therefore each and every negative thing you considered so far, you are bound to see in a at least neutral way or in a constructive way. So therefore ultimately as Achan Brahmavanso is putting, the breath become a beautiful breathing then. Otherwise you are always complaining and telling, I can't tackle breath, it is not with me, it is always running, the thoughts coming, pain coming and all the kind of thing. So don't consider or claim them as me or mine or self. It's a natural thing. Whenever possible, try to see the yet another facet of the breathing, and therefore it is not limited to cross-legged in the meditation hall. It is not limited to walking meditation. It is not limited to the day-to-day activities in the monastery. Even when you go back home, exactly the same. Because the funny thing, whatever the busyness, you never postpone breathing. It is an inbuilt thing. So you have to understand when you are under the different calamities and difficulties, how to keep the track with the breath. So therefore in the day-to-day activities you can ask, what the hell, what the kind of distraction can distract or cut off me from the breath? Never. Even you jump into the water, you come out and breathe again. Even you are in a sleep, you breathe. Even you are blackguarding someone person, breathe. Even you are receiving someone's blackguarding, still breathing. So therefore the day you understand breathing in these under conducive conditions and put it into the walking situation and the day-to-day activities, exactly the same thing going to lead you, and guarantee is once you develop the mindfulness, breath becomes your closest companion, spiritual friend. That day you don't feel lonely. You never feel the difference between alienation and aloneness. For the moment that loneliness is a very bad thing, but aloneness is good. But when you understand the value of breathing under the light of mindfulness, when you are alone or lonely, no difference. Wherever you go, you can keep the track with. So that's, I thought, enough for the day. Thank you very much for listening.